experience. That was Dire Straits' Money for Nothing. And if you're wondering why we're chuckling, you're probably not watching. You're probably listening to the podcast. And I don't know if we should explain everything that happened.
We like to ham it up a little bit at the beginning.
No, we were having fun. We are live today. It's September 14th, 2008. I'm Matt Dillahunty, joined this week Don Baker.
Hey, good to be here.
How you doing?
Great.
Today was a board meeting Sunday, and I'll get more to that when I go through the regular announcements. Last week we kind of did an experiment, pushed off some of the announcements, and tried to take as many calls as possible. We may do that more often, depending on what kind of feedback we get, how often we think we need to do it. Today we're kind of back to normal, reasonably back to normal. Don's got some stuff to talk about with regard to Scamlets, I believe. And so we'll explain all that, but I want to go through some of the regular announcements and some of the special announcements. Most importantly, and we'll probably reiterate this several times over the next few weeks, beginning October 5th, 2008, the Atheist Experience will be moving to a new time and channel. If you watch live here in Austin, we will be moving to Channel 16 from 4:30 to 6 p.m. So currently we're on every Sunday on Channel 10 from 3 to 4:30. October 5th, this changes. Channel 16, 4:30 to 6 p.m. Pass the word around so that we don't show up October 5th and have no calls. There's a lot of reasons for us doing this. One of the big reasons for the channel change from 10 to 16 is that UT campus does not get 10, but they do get 16. So this will open up the show to residents on campus and allow us to hopefully get some more feedback from college community.
I think it helps us reach more Grande viewers as well.
It may be the case. We're on Time Warner and Grande Communications cable. I'm on Grande, and I get us on Channel 10, or I did. I haven't been recording the show lately to watch. But anyway, we think 16 is going to be an improvement across the board. For those of you who listen to the podcast or on Google Video, you probably won't see any change at all. Same studio, same cameras, same yahoos up here telling you why we do or don't believe whatever we do or don't believe. So that's October 5th. As a reminder, next Saturday, or this coming Saturday, September 20th, is the Bat Cruise, the ACA Bat Cruise. We do this every year. This is our third annual one. We've got the Big Boat book, which means we need at least 51 people. I know there are roughly that many, if not more, who have verbally committed, but there's information on the website about meeting time, the place, the price, how to pay, how to make sure that people know that you're coming. We're looking forward to this. It's a good time for people to come out, hang out, share some time with other atheists, watch the bats, have a little drink, have a little snack, just meet and talk and have a good night out. September 27th, the following Saturday, we'll be getting up bright and early, so I'm obviously looking forward to that Saturday morning, to go down to San Antonio to the San Antonio Zoo. The information about that is also available at our website, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, www.atheist-community.org. That's the website of the Atheist Community of Austin, the group that sponsors this program. It's a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. And the ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road beginning around 11:30, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. That lecture begins, the doors open at 12. We'd like to begin the lecture around 12:15, 12:30 at the absolute latest, but shoot for 12-ish, 12:15. We don't have a lecture lined up for October, but we do have
we have an event planned,
a panel discussion event planned for October. The September lecture was Oak de Berg, a retired colonel who came in to talk a little bit about whether or not atheists are or are not the new blacks, women, gays, whatever in the military. Whether or not you can equate those issues and the prejudice. As well received as always. It's always a pleasure to have him come down and speak to us.
It was a good lecture. Yeah.
And so we're looking forward to seeing him again. If you know people in the Austin area or somebody that would be willing to come to the Austin area to participate in those lectures, we do not always just talk about atheism or religion. We've had lectures on science subjects, education subjects, some political subjects, volunteer subjects. We've had
like thinking groups.
I can't remember. Not CARE, CASA. The Court Appointed Special Advocates group came in and talked to us about people willing to devote their time to help displaced children and work within the system to make sure that things don't fall apart there. So we've had lots of good discussions. We're looking for more. And now with the school year starting, there's plenty of opportunities for some really good lectures. So I'm looking forward to that as we move forward there. In addition to this program, the audio portion is available for download at atheist-experience.com, which you can get to from atheist-community.org. There's an archive section page up at that site, and there's some controls at the bottom so that you can expand it. We only host the audio for the
6-8 months, something like that.
Yeah, a handful of months worth of the most recent episodes. But the video links are up there. If you expand the chart, you can go back and see. We don't have video for every episode, but every episode that we have video for is now up there, available to watch at Google Video, going back for the whole 10, 11 years of the show, with some gaps and some missing early on. The Atheist Experience webpage also now has a new fan page where we list the contributions of people who appreciate the show and have done some extra work that we don't have time to do, which has actually proven to be very beneficial, by pulling out clips, their favorite clips and segments from the show, posting them on YouTube in smaller versions, so that if you don't want to watch the entire episode, but you want to get a good bit of information that was passed out, hear a particularly inspiring rant,
or a funny caller,
or funny
whatever.
caller, all of those are up there, or a good caller. There are more and more clips showing up there. Some of them have been translated with subtitles in foreign languages, and we appreciate the effort of everybody there. And so one of the things that Don wanted to do was to show that appreciation, to have that site up there where we can kind of consolidate those. So that's what's going on. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a biweekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. And you can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information. We're live every other Saturday from 2 to 3:30 Central. We don't take live calls, but we do run a chat service in conjunction with the program where you can visit with other people who are listening live. You don't have to listen to live. We post it as a podcast after the fact. All the instructions are there at the site. We'll be live again this coming Saturday. We will not be doing a long show. We say we're on from 2 to 3:30. Sometimes we run over. We normally start late. We normally run over. This coming Saturday, we're going to end on time. Otherwise, I won't make it down for the back cruise. I don't want to miss the boat. So, we'll be doing that.
Swimming in Town Lake.
One of the projects, one of the reasons we had the second Sunday of every month is the ACA board meeting. All ACA members are welcome to attend, participate, but only board members can vote. And this morning's board meeting focused on an atheist voter's guide. We'll have more information about that once we start getting responses in. We finalized the list of questions and made some decisions. We'll be mailing those out. The hope is that, and these are going out to positions in Texas, so for those of you listening outside of the Texas area, you may not get as much benefit from it, but for the upcoming November 4th, 2008 Texas elections, we wanted to cover the vast majority of positions that are open and send out a questionnaire to get feedback that we think will be of use to all voters, but specifically, I think it's
focusing on issues we care about, like church-state separation and equal treatment and freedom of conscience and these sorts of things.
Yeah, it's questions that aren't always answered or are occasionally softballed. So we're optimistic about that. We're hoping to get a response from many of the people who are running for offices, and once we get that data collected, we'll get it posted up on the website. After the show is over, oh, by the way, we also have a happy hour every Thursday at the Dog and Duck at 17th and Guadalupe, beginning around 7 o'clock. After this program's over, we've been going to dinner at Threadgill's. The address is on the screen now. We're on until 4:30. We're down there around 5 o'clock or so. Remember that while we'll continue this once the show moves, when the show is known from 4:30 to 6, dinner will be shifted to about 6:30 or so. So make those plans accordingly. And now, 9.5 minutes into the show, put your little marker. Matt's finally finished rambling about all the announcements.
There's a lot of stuff.
There is. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things that may be going on in the near future that we're not ready to announce and not really talking about. Potential new pub crawls and other trips like that.
Fun stuff.
So what do you have for us
What
today?
do I have for us today? Well, a couple months ago, in June 22nd, Russell Glasser did a show on financial scams.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
I was
But
here.
it was a very good show, and he talked about sort of how financial scams work and that sort of thing. And I had been meaning for a long time to talk about religious financial scams, and it's a very, very, very big topic. You know, I feel like this is part one of 80 billion. I don't think I'm going to hit it every week for the next, rest of my life, but I did want to, bring up this topic. I'm just going to scratch the surface today and have a little fun with it. And in effect, these financial scams are a earthly reason not to believe. So we very often focus on theological stuff and why that's not convincing us, that sort of thing. Well, here's a completely different way of looking at the problem. Look at how religions actually work in the real world and ask yourself, is this an organization that you trust? You know, given that they're doing these scams, how can you trust this? And how can you trust anything they say? How can you trust them on the big issues if you can't trust them on the little day-to-day issues, right? So
as kind of a preemptive example, there's a little factoid which I'm going to do off the top of my head, so the numbers aren't necessarily completely correct. In that famous December 05, I guess, edition of Mother Jones that talks about church-state separation, where the Christian life truly, there's a section on charitable donations and who gives what to whom and how much. One of the interesting things is there are websites, if you're interested in giving to a charity, there are websites you can go to that evaluate charities to determine how much of every dollar you donate actually goes towards the cause as opposed to administrative costs, overheads, whatever else. And some of the claims made by some of these organizations, I don't want to flatly claim that anybody's dishonest. They may represent this honestly. But, for example, after the tsunami, Focus on the Family listed a donation of, I don't know how many, maybe it's $2 million or something like that, but included 1 million copies, 1 million copies of one of James Dobson's books. It's something like,
holy moly,
when God does things we don't understand, or something like that. I can't remember the title of the book. Somebody will know. I don't know what the going price was for each of those 1 million copies, but if their total donation was like 2 million, and that included 1 million copies, those books, if they were $1 a piece, that's already half of the donation. So it's a way of kind of like fluffing the numbers and saying, oh, we donated $2 million in charity aid to the tsunami victims.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if the tsunami victims need a book necessarily. Maybe they need some food or.
You sent them 1 million copies of proselytizing, and books are made of paper.
Yeah.
And
they
in
get
a flood zone,
they get waterlogged.
paper's probably not the best thing to send. I don't care what you wrote on it, unless it was a check. But anyway, go on with your stuff. I didn't mean to derail us.
All right.
I'm not a Dobson fan.
The title of the show is called Scamlets, and it's a tongue-in-cheek thing. It's a word I made up, and it's not yet a word, but let's make it one. And the definition is a simple, reusable scam that religions use to make money and control people. So I'm going to focus on 5 things today that are used over and over and over again. And once you recognize those things, you'll see them all over. And I think it's good for folks to be aware that these things are there. So, and the common thread of all of these things are that the people that are taken in by the scam are being lazy and allowing others to think on their behalf. And if you do that, if you allow others people to think for you, their agenda is going to be put in the mix, and they don't necessarily have your interests at heart. It's very simple sort of conflict of interest issue. If you're allowing somebody else to think for you, you're in effect giving up some of your control over what you do to them. And very often people have a profit motive in doing this. So religions are based on this idea. They glorify faith, which I consider to be gullibility. I've talked about that. They manufacture and perpetuate ignorance and glorify blind following. And they reap the rewards of this. So we have a caller already.
I apologize for
interrupting.
A caller. I just want to make a note. I realize that there's one caller, and I know last week we took lots of calls. I want to let Don get through a chunk of this before we actually take calls. Feel free to hang on the line. We'll get to you. You're still first.
Yeah, let me get through maybe 2 of them, and then we'll take some calls, and we'll come back and do the rest.
Sure.
How about that? Okay. So religions, I think, are based on these scamlets. I think that they use them, and it's the basic reason why so many religious leaders are con artists. We have seen that all the time with Ted Haggard and Ken Hovind and Dobson, Kennedy. All these folks are making money through these scams. All the faith healers, for example. This is no shortage of these. So they all make their living selling crap, and they're very good at it. Some are very good at it. So lest you think I'm making this up, let's take some quotes from religious leaders in their own words and see if that bears out. So Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, reason is the devil's greatest whore. By the nature and manner, she is being a noxious whore. She is a prostitute. The devil's appointed whore. You get the whore thing, right? Whore eaten by scab and leprosy, who ought to be trodden underfoot and destroyed, and she in her wisdom. Throw dung on her face and make her ugly. This is all about denigrating reason. She is and ought to be drowned in baptism. She would deserve the wretch to be banished by the filthiest place in the house to the closets. Okay. Here's another one.
I must say, though, that there are a number of apologists, I won't name any comfort names, who seem to hold very
similar
close to Luther, in that while they may not say, spread dung in the face of reason, they sure do spread a lot of dung in the face of reason in their arguments.
Yeah. Well, I think they have to in order to get their point across. Here's one from Tertullian. I believe because it is impossible.
Yeah, I love that.
Thomas Aquinas. Belief is the greatest of sin. Unbelief is the greatest of sins. Here's James Dobson. Those who control what young people are taught and what they experience, what they see, hear, think, and believe, will determine the future course for the nation. So those are some religious quotes that kind of confirm what I'm saying. And what do atheists think of this? Well, some of the atheists say things like Richard Dawkins says, faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to avoid the need to think. So everybody's kind of saying the same thing here. Christopher Hitchens, religion is a poison because it asks us to give us our most precious faculty, which is that of reason, and to believe things based on evidence, without evidence. It then asks us to respect this, which it calls faith. And another one, beware of allowing others to interpret reality on your own behalf. Who said that? Me.
I was going to say, it didn't.
Okay, I'm a great atheist. What do you know? So today I want to look at 5 different scamlets, and I've given them names. One is called special knowledge or power. One is called stealing credit. One is called future reward. Fourth is codependence, and the last one is sin. So those are the ones I want to cover today. I am just scratching the surface. There's plenty more. And we welcome callers. Call in and tell us, what you think of these, whether you've seen these sorts of things, whether you have additional examples. So what I'm going to do is go through each of these and talk about how it works and give some examples of it, and then, of course, why you shouldn't believe in it. So that's the structure of the show. I want to hit 5 of those. I don't know whether we'll make it through all 5, but did you have anything?
No.
Go ahead.
Let's go.
Special knowledge and power. So priests and ministers and imams all claim, their main claim to fame is that they have some special relationship with the big guy, Hank, that relationship can help you immensely if only you'll do a little favor for them in return. So that's the basis of this. So tithing, you end up giving your tithing to the church in order to reap these benefits of the special knowledge, special power. You give your life over to God. You spread the good news. You raise your children in the religion and those sorts of things. Those are the types of things you give in return. These folks may, here's some examples. They may offer you protection from the evils of the world.
By the way.
Yes.
To be fair, and before anybody calls in, although maybe I should just let somebody call in and then we can correct it after the fact. We're not necessarily painting all believers with the same brush. And we're not saying Don's kind of scam thing is a simplification so that you can understand it's not like a preacher gets up there and says, I got a special hotline to God, and if you give me money, I'll hook you up. It's couched slightly more subtle.
Oh yes, it's much more subtlety. Right? So I'm giving the kind of.
But by giving the caricature, hopefully you can identify it, because this is in fact what happens, and you see it all the time. You see ministers say, you're not giving money to me, you're giving money to the Lord to carry on the Lord's good work, so that we can keep doing what we need to do. And if the Lord happens to give me a private plane and a Mercedes in order to do that work, that's His choice.
I love it, Matt. You should be a minister.
I should have been. I'd be freaking rich.
You'd be freaking rich.
And I wouldn't be sitting here on
Get your
TV.
money for nothing and your checks for free. Okay. Okay.
It's easy to get money that way, because Well, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll get to the justifications behind it.
So I thought of a number of examples. We can probably think of a dozen more, but they may offer you protection from the evils of the world, such as offering you amulets or special
Prayer cloths.
Prayer cloths. That's a good one, right? Rod Parsley, who happens to be the spiritual advisor of John McCain, runs a scam where he blesses these little towels that he calls them prayer cloths, and you're supposed to wipe them somewhere and get these special benefits from that, and that's a little scam he runs, and that's how he makes his money. Welcome to America. Okay, so amulets, relics. The Catholic Church was very big on this, especially in medieval times. They would have shrines you'd go to and pray and hopefully get the blessings of that particular shrine. Guadalupe is an example of that. There are tons and tons more.
Selling of indulgences.
Selling of indulgences, these sorts of things.
Which they've stopped doing. So, I'm curious. I mean, on the one hand, we'd like to say that some religions have gotten better. Like I mentioned last week, we had to drag some of them kicking and screaming towards, decent, ethical, moral treatment of other people. So, we want to make sure we give the Catholics full credit for their ability to stop selling indulgences and stop denigrating science all the time. And
they needed a little encouragement along the way.
Stop killing people for not believing. I mean, let's give them some credit there. So don't write me and say that I don't give religion credit for anything. On the other hand, I don't know. Let's imagine you've got a little kid and he's running around the table at a restaurant, biting people on the legs and kicking them. Do you give him a reward when he stops? Or do you not expect that, you're supposed to have stopped? You shouldn't have been doing that in the first place. And now that you've stopped, I'm going to stop yelling at you and beating the crap out of you. Not that I'm advocating, but that's the point. How much benefit do you give somebody when they stop doing the wrong thing? It's okay to say, hey, we're really glad that you stopped being such an ass. But
you should have done that anyway.
I shouldn't have to keep heaping praise on you because you stopped being an ass. How many times do we have to say, yes, it's nice that the Catholic Church has stopped selling indulgences and killing people? I don't need to say it every week. Do something new to earn a little praise. Drop some of the, various policies that you have with regard to charitable giving when it comes to things that violate your personal religious beliefs. But anyway.
So we talked about amulets and these sorts of things. Well, even in modern times, it's a very common topic, protection from evil as a sermon topic, right? Billy Graham was, I understand, the master of this. He would go on and on at the beginnings of the sermons about how we have a fallen world and it's a terrible place, and if you just give yourself over to God and Jesus, things will be okay. And so he's offering you this protection from the evils of the world. You see this play out in the rhetoric of the religious right that the liberals are evil and we need to have protection from the liberal agendas and gays and all these things and
by the way, for the people who may be objecting to this, saying about saying that it's a scam, who think that there's actually something real in it, this isn't limited to Christianity or any one religion or anything else. You see this all the time. You walk into any New Age woo-woo shop and they're freaking happy to sell you amulets and bless this and charm to that.
Yeah.
The scam is universal. And if you look at those and say, those aren't real but mine are, you really need to provide a justification that is investigatable, verifiable, independently confirmable. Otherwise, you're engaged in a bit of special pleading. You are dismissing those things that you consider absurd without evidence, and then allowing a few extras in because they're your personal beliefs. These are the ones you prefer or that you were raised with. I'm not interested in that. I mean, I am interested in finding out what people believe and why. But if your best justification is this is just what I believe, well, we don't need to bother talking about it because you can offer nothing more to substantiate your claims than the crystal power morons. Oh, I said I wasn't going to call people morons anymore. I'm a liar.
You're a liar.
Have you ever told a lie? What does that make you? A liar.
Yeah.
All right. So the crystal power crowd.
Yeah.
Who are morons.
The Apostle Paul was also a liar, by the way. Anyway.
You think?
Okay.
So
here's another variation of it, the special knowledge and power, and they may offer you to fix your problems. So if you're sick, a faith healer might want to extract a little money out of you to do some cure you of whatever ill you have, and we can talk a lot about that in a little bit. They may offer to fix your money woes. So the prosperity gospel, which is very, very popular, is based on this idea that if you give a little bit of money to your church or whatever and earn God's favor, God will you'll reap the rewards of God's blessings and make a lot of money. And it works on a confirmation bias thing, right? So it's a scam in that if there is a success, then they take credit for it, which is coming up later, taking credit.
Right.
If there's not a success, well, you haven't given enough. So either way, they win, right? It's heads you win.
Or they're just not going to report it.
Lose.
You're never going to hear about the cases where it failed, where somebody donated the last of their checking account and then ended up in a soup kitchen the next week because it didn't work out.
So yeah, this is the basis of the prosperity gospel. Yep. We've already talked about indulgences, blessings, prayer rugs. We've talked about those sorts of things. So this is how it works. So let's do a little thought experiment. I believe. Have you ever read a comic book?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I believe that comic books actually address having special knowledge and has special powers much, much better than religions do. I think that they actually get to what are the moral issues and things. So in comic books, it never works like religion does, right? And so in comics, and I would say that the comic books are more true to life even, right? So how does that work? Well, in the comic books, the people that have these special powers actually use them.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't actually sell them to people for little bits of money here and there. They don't pretend to use them. They actually use them. And they struggle with the moral issues involved in whether they should use them and when they should use them and these sorts of things. And these are the big themes in these superhero comic books. And they use them to fight crime or save the world or help people. And they struggle with issues of personal gain and whether or not they're using those powers for themselves or for others and how to best use them. All these things. So this is really what it would be like if there was special knowledge or special power.
Yeah, it reminds me not only of the whole many people who claim different psychic powers, the ability to talk to the dead or predict the future or find whatever. All of a sudden, when put to the test, they can no longer demonstrate their power. So we got a problem there with the efficacy of their claim. But going to the comic book things, would it be morally unjustified for, let's say, Spider-Man, since he seems to be the favorite on the show, to take a tip?
Right.
Like if somebody steals your purse and Spider-Man swoops in and bangs the guy over the head and recovers your purse, would it be unethical for him to take a small tip? I don't think so, but he'd turn it down.
That's right. He provided a service.
This is some kind of upstanding superhero thing. But I wouldn't have too much of an objection with it. Would it be wrong for Spider-Man to sell out his services to corporations who needed protection? No, I don't have any problem with that at all. He's putting his powers to ability.
It's honest work, right?
But what if Spider-Man started a monthly subscription service where you could pay $50 a month, and as long as he wasn't busy with something else, he might swing over and protect you from something if it went wrong? Now you're getting closer to what these Scamlets end up doing, where they promise something, but it's not without its hitches, and it may not come true. And if it doesn't come true, it's not the person doing the scam who's at fault. It's you. Most of the time. Occasionally it may be God decided not to do this, but usually that's because you've done something. And so that's not any different from, I would have loved to come and save you from those muggers, but I was stopping a bank robbery downtown, and I can't be at two places at once. So, we couldn't honor your request this time. Maybe next time.
Keep the money flowing.
Keep it coming in. That's what these scams end up doing.
Yeah.
And granted, you said, well, I don't have a monthly subscription. Oh, really? I think if you look up Tithe, that's a weekly subscription. Shoot.
For people who don't know, tithe means tenth.
Yes.
And it's basically this supposed obligation that you're supposed to give a tenth of your income to the church that you belong to, and it's changed in meaning over time to mean just your
to
duty.
To mean 20% sometimes.
You had your duty to pay the church.
Yeah. There are a lot that run with this tithe plus an offering. And, that's the prosperity gospel, at least within Christianity, is backed up by biblical passages. And I'm not going to find it, but if somebody in the back room wants to find it, about casting your bread upon the water and it's going to return on every wave, basically you're going to get threefold, sevenfold, depending on whatever. And they take this, and which I would think could be an actually true and beneficial idea if it's viewed as a general rule of thumb about how you treat people. That there's no guarantee that if I'm friendly to people, they're going to be friendly to me. There's no, cause and effect relationship there. But we know, as a general rule of thumb, that if you are pleasant to people, they are more likely to be pleasant to you. And that if you live your life, being, for the most part, morally correct and caring and kind to people, that you are more likely to receive those benefits, and you may get back more than you put in. Not necessarily threefold or sevenfold, but to take this and spin it in a way where, it says right here in the Bible, and therefore, if you send me a check, I realize somewhere out there's a little old lady who just got that $1,000 Social Security check. And you're thinking, what do I need to do with this? I need to buy groceries. I need to do this and that. But if you actually send that into me, God has told me that the sacrifice that you make will be returned to you tenfold.
And they say it with a straight face.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen, there's video footage out there.
There's a lot of desperate people out there that want that to be true.
It's not just them asking for money. You look at some of these shysters, and they will flat out say, they'll make a claim about a little old lady with a Social Security check, because guess who's mostly watching? And when they make a claim like that, maybe it's right for 50 different listeners.
Or
and
thousands.
Each one of them thinks that he's talking to them, that he's got a special word of knowledge from God about them and their check that they just received. And if you get more specific about it, like if you know what the standard Social Security check is, you don't have to, don't round it off. I know that in Detroit right now, there's a woman who just got a check for $850. You do something like that. If you have your show broadcast to enough people, some of the crap you fling is going to stick somewhere, and you get money for nothing.
Well, these are unverifiable claims. Nobody in the audience can verify this claim.
Yeah.
Right, and that's how it works, right? But he might be convincing, he might be believable, he might have a lot of charisma, and people buy into it, and they don't realize they're being taken in. So that's why they call it a con game. It's confidence, right? You've earned the confidence of these people, and they're giving you money.
Oh, somewhere out there, I'm getting a word of knowledge from Darwin.
Yeah, talking to the dead's another good one. It's like
there's an atheist who's viewing this program. Your name is Bob, and you were
Robert or Fred.
Well, your name is Bob. You could go by Robert, but you were either in a car accident or had a very close call with a car accident 2, 3, 4 days ago. Darwin told me to tell you that you need to email me and let me know if I got it right. I don't need your money. I just want to make the point. We'll see how many listeners we got. I bet I get one email. But,
Yeah.
car accidents are common. And near misses, way more common. And once you extend it out a few days, a few weeks.
Oh, sure.
Anyway.
I mean, people don't realize it's like there are, 6.7 billion people on the earth, and 1 in a million things happen daily. It's ho-hum. That's small potatoes.
And within specific societies, our lives are very, very similar. Mm-hmm. People generally get up, go to work, eat, go home, watch TV, read the news, surf the net, go to bed. Maybe if they're lucky, they get to have sex. Then there are a number of common experiences that occur to people. You have car accidents, near car accidents. Somebody was in a car accident. I mean, there's a reason why there's a freaking insurance company for automobiles, and it's because this is common. So saying something like that, I mean, it would be more surprising if I had not just described somebody than that I did. But
yeah. So let me wrap this up, and we'll take a call, and then we'll jump back in. How about that?
Good idea.
So seriously, if you had special powers, or special knowledge of the world, would you set up a worldwide bureaucracy to dole it out in small pieces and take money and use it to take money from the poor? No.
Yes.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
No. You'd be using that stuff. If you were really a faith healer, you'd be in a hospital trying to help people and cure people, right? But no, the faith healers are there in front of audiences bilking them for money, right? They're not in.
Now, see, here's where I might disagree. I think if I could touch somebody and actually just heal them, regrow limbs, cure cancer, whatever. Yeah, I think I probably would be in hospitals healing people. I don't think I would necessarily ask for money. I might accept donations because I have to live. Mm-hmm. And if I'm spending all my time doing this. So it's not necessarily, you don't have to be utterly magnetic.
You don't have to be altruistic or whatever.
But I would always demonstrate and both my ability and actually do the whole I've done some work and received some compensation and not just talked about maybe doing some work and received the compensation. That just doesn't work.
Right. You would cure amputees, for example.
I would.
Which God can't do, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's terrible at it.
So let's see. If you could talk to the dead, you'd go and you'd solve crimes, right? But we don't see too much of that.
Actually, before I started solving crimes, I'd actually find out what it's like to be dead, where they are, and have them describe what happens after death. And that's a big issue.
Yeah, a lot of people are very curious about that.
And then I might, God, solve some crimes.
Yeah. So those are some of the things you might do. Well, ministers are constantly in the news for their abuse of power. They're abusing kids, they're stealing money, they're doing all sorts of lies and these sorts of things. But we have never, ever, 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 ever heard of them abusing a supernatural power. It just never happens.
Wow.
And that's because they don't have any supernatural powers. They don't have any special knowledge. That's why.
He prayed for God to ruin my life and it happened. I want to sue him.
So all their power comes from their ability to con people and rob them and using unverifiable claims. And so that's how they work. And Russell brought this up on his Financial Scams show. It's like, where does the money come from? It comes from you. Churches are very much like casinos. They're these big, beautiful places. They're opulent. You go in, you play the odds, right? Maybe you'll get something out of it. You're putting stuff into it, and try your luck. And all of that opulence is paid for by you. Both in Las Vegas and in the church, and that's where
at least Vegas is honest about what your odds are.
God doesn't have any money, right?
We've talked about this before. This idea of the reason there's no misuse of the powers because there isn't any power, and we've given lots of examples. So, an example, both teams are going to pray before the football game starts. Should the losing team claim that the other one cheated because they prayed, or their prayers were answered, or their prayers were
and why
done more
are
properly?
They praying for that instead of something better?
And I'd be more than happy for we want some demonstration that prayer actually works. So for one thing, if you're a nice kind of person and you would rather not see anything bad happen, you could demonstrate that prayer works by praying for God to demonstrate himself to me in a way that would not only enlighten me, but allow me to enlighten other people as well. That's a decent prayer. I wouldn't call that a misuse. But I'm happy for you to go ahead and, let's say, pray that I get struck by lightning. I might get struck by lightning regardless of whether you pray or not. We should pick something really, crazy. Like I get mobbed and run over by a bunch of naked roller derby queens in my room. Uh-huh. Surely the creator, all-power creator of the universe can do that.
That should be small.
That's got to be
potatoes.
trivial.
Small potatoes.
I'll not only be happy to go out that way, I'll videotape it as proof that your prayer came true. Give me some
what a deal.
tattooed brazen hussies with roller skates just banging into me and tossing me around the room. I'll kick it off nice.
Okay, Matt.
All right.
Well, let's stop for that one. Next one will be stealing credit, but let's take this call.
Sure. Is it Jason? How you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm actually from Oregon, so it's only like one here. But
so
I think
one
it's
caller
actually
from
good
Oregon.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I think it's actually good that I called because then I can listen because I'm actually not from the area, so I can't watch it on TV.
Yeah.
Right. Since you guys seem to be talking about that, do you want me to, like I could like spend a little bit more time and actually talk about something that relates to that, because like, or I could just.
Well, I think we'd prefer if you just ask a question, we answer it, and we go on.
Oh, okay. Well,
how does that sound?
I guess that's good. Like, well, the thing is, I'm not really sure if it's a question. It's kind of more comments that I had about
that's
like,
fine.
things that I've been watching the videos on the archives.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And one thing that actually kind of annoyed me, but not that much, because apparently different people on the show have different definitions of agnosticism. So some people will say, oh, well, yeah, those people are agnostic theists. And then Tracy was saying, well, how can you be agnostic theist? That doesn't make any sense. And I define agnostic as ultimate reality can't be known. So we can kind of have an idea, but ultimately we don't really know. So
Sure, but it depends on what you mean by no.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this a number of times, and what kind of definitions, what definitions you use and find useful, certainly contribute to whether or not we agree. I would guess, though. I mean, I know even when Tracy and I disagree on what word is best or what description is best, I think we're almost in complete agreement on the actual nature of the universe, how we go about describing it, what labels we find useful and practical. That may differ, and I think that may be the case. I mean, you're going to find that everywhere.
Okay, well, I think I actually agree with you for the most part, though, on agnostic, and I think I'm pretty much atheist, but I just don't really call myself that.
Yeah.
I actually could get into this whole thing, like we are the self-aware universe, but I'm not going to. I'll email you about it.
Okay. That's a good prompt, though, because I haven't mentioned the email thing. In addition to the frequently asked questions portion of the webpage, if you don't get through on the phone today or you don't want to, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, the co-host, some of the people behind the scenes. So thank you for bringing that up, and please continue.
Yeah, it probably goes along with Spinoza's God stuff, because basically nature is God stuff. But anyway, another thing, it actually also bugs me when people call in and ask, saying, do you think people will ever evolve past religion? And I'm sitting here because I kind of understand how evolution works pretty well, so it's like, I just want to be able to say that no, evolution will not, as long as there are people that are prone to believe in religions still reproducing.
Yeah, and I see your point, and I don't necessarily disagree. To be fair, they're not necessarily talking strictly about biological evolution. They may have been talking about it in a more metaphorical sense, about the evolution of memes and ideas. I think you're right. Either way, I don't expect, certainly not in my lifetime, I don't know that we could ever truly get rid of religion, because what we're talking about, we may get rid of it in the sense that we understand it now. But what we're really talking about is superstition and an over-reliance on inference and induction rather than deduction and evidence and reason. And the thing is, that reliance on both authority and inference is very useful and practical, especially in rearing young, but also in everyday life. If you had to analyze every decision you made based on every other decision you made,
you'd starve to death.
Yeah, you'd starve. You'd never get anything done.
Yeah.
And so the reliance on that kind of rule of thumb, general kind of pragmatic sense, your gut feeling, will always be there. And the thing that I think we need to do, which will, I think, eliminate religion in the sense that we view it now. You're never going to completely eliminate flaws and fallacies and superstitions, but is to hone the critical thinking ability of people. Because when you say you're going with your gut, basically you are making a decision based on past experiences, evidence, and your understanding of reality. And if we can fine-tune people's ability to analyze situations critically, to consider evidence that more accurately reflects reality as it actually is, then that builds their gut instinct to the point where it's more reliable. And things like, at least religious in the dogmatic sense, I would hope begin to go away, but not anytime soon.
Well, let me make a comment here. Religions are evolving too.
Yes.
They're changing over time, and I believe they are effectively adapting towards being more useful in propagating themselves within humans, right? They help meet our fears and our needs, and as our fears and needs change, they're going to change along with us. So it's kind of like an arms race of some sort.
Yeah, it seems that no matter how science really goes anyway, they're just going to go along with it and just say, oh, well, yeah, we knew that all along anyway.
Yes. That sort of revisionist thing, you see it all the time with the issue of evolution, where at first the church is profoundly against evolution. And by the way, the Church of England is evidently getting ready to offer an apology to Charles Darwin for being a little too robust in their tone against him. And then all of a sudden you get people who've now revised their religion to say, oh, well, of course evolution's true, but that's the way God worked. That's what this passage that we used to interpret literally is actually just kind of metaphor. But
Yeah, it's a great example of it changing, right?
This talking about the evolution of religions actually comes to my other point that I wanted to say about how I don't know if how much people ask, like, maybe how did religion come about through evolution? And my kind of hypothesis for it is that maybe it's kind of like that supernatural where it's like, oh, well, people will look at these birds and see that these birds do a certain thing every year at the same time season. Mm-hmm. And so like the seasonal and it really goes along with the agricultural and even before agricultural stuff of just being able to understand what's going on without really understanding what's going on, but they can at least apply it and use it so that they can say, oh, well, the God will bless us in this day.
Right.
And they don't have to know why, but they just know that it does. And so it's like, well, it works. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it really is a very quick way to get people to just say, oh, well, God says so, I guess I better follow along. Okay, I'll be nice to you.
It's a shortcut. Religion is generally a shortcut to get people to take actions without having to provide justifications. It's a shortcut to get people to accept things without doing any thinking. And you're right, this idea of, well, it works for me, so that's good enough. I mean, I've been having a discussion with somebody, and hi, Kat. I've enjoyed it immensely, and we're talking about this in a whole bunch of different areas, and I don't want to go into all of it now, but the basic premise is I have to make decisions for the most part based on my experience. And my point is that, as I mentioned before, we need to hone our experiences and our ability to make those decisions. But the fact of the matter is, at some point or another, it's worked for me every time, and that may be good enough evidence. And that sort of biased, basis for making decisions is, I think, part of the problem is that people see or think they see or experience some phenomenon. And then because they don't know what the actual cause of the phenomenon is, they attribute a cause. It makes sense. Then the next time they see this similar phenomena, they attribute the same cause because it seems to make sense. And they've never actually established any causal link between these, but the more times they see this phenomenon, and the more times they continue to attribute it to a source, they have essentially conditioned themselves, and for lack of a better word, brainwashed themselves into linking these two things without ever demonstrating any link.
Yeah, and then so you get a bunch of these faith healers that do these magic tricks and say, oh, look, I removed the cancer.
Yeah.
See, look, it's this little piece of dangly meat stuff.
There's a lot of fraud there if you dig around a little bit.
A lot of crazy stuff, including one-eyed blindfolded drivers. But we got full lines, and I know Don's got some stuff to get through. I want to thank you for the call, Jason. We're going to move on to some of the other folks that are working.
I just want to leave with one comment.
Sure.
There are three kinds of lies.
Okay.
Lies, damned lies, and creationism.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
The lies that never quite go away.
The only thing is that you've equated creationism with statistics, and I don't think there are any statistics.
No.
But I like the joke. Is it Albert on the line?
Yeah, this is Albert.
How you doing, Albert?
I'm doing fine, guys. How are y'all?
Good.
Pretty good.
Kind of a quick comment, or I guess a question. I'm not sure. Whatever. I was just watching the show. I always flip through this channel every once in a while, and I always stay on this channel for a little bit because there's a lot of great shows. But there's something that they were talking about earlier, like the morals and different things. I know Matt. You're talking about how if you're good to people, generally that's going to come back. I mean, not necessarily all the time, but generally it does. And I wanted that kind of made me think about something I was studying in philosophy when I was in actual college. Now I can't afford it. But anyway, I remember there was something that talking about Saul and how I think he changed his name to Paul after he saw a vision in the sky or something. And he was basically like the founder of what is modern Christianity or Catholicism, really. And
he's the guy.
He made the hierarchy.
I certainly blame him for a good chunk of it.
Right, and I think that a lot of what has happened, at least I can only speak for Christianity because I used to be a Catholic. I was even confirmed and all that. But what's funny is that the day I was confirmed, that was the day I started not believing, or I started questioning more because of, I don't know really why, I just started to, but almost like the gut feeling kind of thing, what you're talking about. And I think that, Jesus as a person, as a man, because I'm pretty sure he was alive and he was a man, he had a great idea of what we should do in the sense that, what you're talking about, be friends to people, love somebody, and they will love you back. Everybody will be, we can live like that. I mean, yes, you'll have bumps in the road and stuff. Anyway, I think that was lost in the whole interpretation of everything and the scope of it. And then I think maybe the elitist of the group of that time who knew science and who knew how to build, who knew about the mind, who knew about thought, they saw an opportunity to take advantage of that and saw a greater cause that they could actually, or an opportunity to promote their greater cause, whatever that is.
Let me jump in if you don't mind.
Yeah.
This idea of treat others as you'd like to be treated is something that's not unique to Christianity. It actually was in Confucius taught this 500 years before.
And it's in the Old Testament as well.
Yeah, so this is not a new idea, and to let you get back to your point, I think you're right that people do take these good ideas and sort of warp them into something for themselves, or warp them into something that helps their cause or their personal agendas.
Yeah, whether or not religion turns out to be useful seems to be far more important than whether or not it turns out to be true. And people, even those people who aren't necessarily trying to use or abuse religion, will still make those same types of comments about whether or not it's beneficial or useful to them. You're not at all alone in thinking that Paul, Saul, the early church, the founders at the beginning of religion basically twisted or morphed what Christianity originally was. I don't know that I necessarily buy that. I certainly think that there was some twisting and changing going on. I don't know that I necessarily buy that it was morphed nearly so much as some people might assert. But the other thing is that I don't consider, and I kind of hem and haw when I say this because I know there's some Christians out there who are just going to lose their mind the second I say it. I don't particularly find the message of Jesus original, inspiring, morally correct, or even much good advice. We've talked about this before. I did a deconstruction of the Sermon on the Mount. If you go to www.ironchariots.org, that is the wiki that...
Iron Chariots?
Yeah, ironchariots.org. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. If you can see it, ironchariots.org. And do a search in the little box there for Sermon on the Mount. You'll get a verse-by-verse look up at the Sermon on the Mount where I point out the things, and this is something that I think anybody should do. And anybody who objects to this, you really need to take a moment to think about why. Because what I've done is I've gone through the verses for what is supposed to be, according to many Christians, the greatest, most inspiring, most perfect speech ever given, and pointed out which bits are good advice, which bits are bad advice, which bits are morally questionable, if not outright immoral in my view, and how, despite the morphing of this doctrine from this vengeful, wrathful God of the Old Testament to the cheek-turning God of the New Testament.
Right.
Jesus seems to violate many of his own ideas, right down to chasing the money changers out of the temple. He didn't just get mad and do it spur of the moment. He got pissed, left the temple, manually made himself a scourge. I mean, that's the way the Bible describes it. He left and made a scourge, not just picked a scourge up that was laying around. That means he got a stick and a bunch of bits of leather and some broken shards and stuff, and constructed a weapon, and then went in and screaming and yelling to chase him out. Now while this may be, and apologists will say, well, that's just. Those money changers shouldn't have been there. I think there's some Jewish scholars that disagree with you because of the requirements for paying your sacrifices and things. The fact of the matter is, this is not the action of a rational, turn the other cheek person. This is irrational. And it's irrationally taken to an extent where it's become a premeditated, justified act that I don't see as justified. I think if that's the best that the wisest man, creator, God thing of the universe, if that's the best solution he could come up to, is to chase somebody around with a scourge, I'm unimpressed. Sorry.
Right. Well, I mean, once again, also the actual Gospels are actually written, I think, 100,000 years after the fact, or not 1,000, but, a few hundred years after he was dead. So
the earliest ones were written several decades after he supposedly lived.
Oh, okay, several decades. Okay, well, I think that maybe there's something, I'm not saying that that's not true or anything. I agree with you on that, definitely, that is irrational. That isn't the turn the cheek kind of thing or whatever, but, as far as it being, even if it was true, like I said, Jesus was a man. He was just a guy. He was anything special. I don't think he could heal people. So I think that was added in as kind of like a Hollywood kind of, that Hollywood kind of view of it.
Very common.
Get somebody interested into the idea.
Yeah, and actually, just to kind of interrupt on one point, I may have made this in the deconstruction. It's a very simple and oversimplified worldview. Even this idea that is lauded across Christianity, turn the other cheek. Somebody wrongs you, turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
That can be good advice. Showing somebody that you're not going to be affected by their wrongs, that you're going to remain positive and still care about them, can change other people. However, that same strategy is what keeps some people in abusive relationships.
Right.
How often do you turn the other cheek? 7 times 70, as the New Testament would have you believe? There are times when it's a bad strategy. And to oversimplify things, it's one thing to have kind of rules of thumbs and guidelines for ethics and generalizations.
Even in Islam, Muhammad was talking about how that's why he was a little bit different, and I think that's why maybe that one's a little bit more prevalent now because, at least Islam is, because it does teach that you need to protect yourself and defend yourself, which is why the extremists have taken that part of it and taken that blown out of proportion, saying they need to defend everything there.
Definitely.
But that part of Islam was actually a little bit different from Jesus, and said, he turned the cheek, which he did agree, but if someone's going to hurt you and kill you and keep you from
let's put a rational limit on it. Because what Christianity does is Christianity.
That's kind of an idea that I think I can relate to. I'm not saying I'm Muslim either or anything like that. I'm just saying I think the problem is that exactly what you just said. Everything is oversimplified.
Christianity promotes the idea of not only making people victims, but making them joyous about being victims.
Right.
The idea that you are so close to God that the devil is going to persecute you and make your life miserable means every miserable moment becomes a testimony to how good you're doing. So you should rejoice in being this victim, which is why they can cry victim all the time. It's absurd. And while Islam has a number of problems, I think it's very telling that there are some improvements on a religion that shows up 700 years later. I'd like to think we learned something in those 700 years.
Yeah, me too.
We just didn't learn enough.
And as far as giving money as well, I know you were talking about that as well. And I don't have a problem with people giving donations because I think churches have to live. They have to live too, just like what you're talking about, the superhero donations, or if you had a special ability, you would take donations because you need to live too. I just think what you are talking about, that it is.
First, show me the special
ability. It's gone out of
ability.
control. I can flip, a day and flip through channels, and there are tons of people that are, oh, give me money, and you'll get it back, whatever. I mean, it doesn't have, they know that it's not going to happen, but then they believe that it does. That's the difference.
Yeah.
I guess knowing and believing are two different things,
Well, Albert, we appreciate the call. We got another couple calls waiting,
Cool.
and Don's got to get some points, but we're glad you called in. And as a reminder, anybody who'd like to join us after the show, we're on for another 30 minutes or so, and then we go to dinner at Threadgill's on Riverside. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join any of our events. You don't have to be a member to attend. And with regard to membership, there have been a lot of questions coming in about, how do I become a member? Can I be a member if I'm not in the Austin area? Information like that's available at the website. You can also email info@atheist-community.org and get answers on that. But I think most of it's covered pretty well on the website.
Yeah. Let me do a postmortem on that call. He brought up the topic of embellishments early in Christianity. If people have some time, go to one of the search engines on the internet and look up pious fraud. Put in those words, and you'll find all sorts of interesting information about all of the embellishments and all the things that they added in early Christianity. The thinking at that time was, tell as many lies as you can and grow this thing, and that is really the foundation. That was the foundation of Christianity, and that's how it grew, is through this pious fraud. And all of those lies became sort of ossified in the dogma of the religion over time. And that's,
The biggest lie is pretending to have answers when you don't have any.
Sure.
That it's so. I realize it's disturbing to say I don't know. I'm not completely comfortable with it. I'm probably more comfortable than some of the callers, but no matter how disturbing it is to say I don't know, there's not that alone is not a justification to pretend that you do know, or to accept an answer that you would otherwise reject because there's not evidence to support it. I just don't get that. By the way, I'll save that. I had a Scamlet thing to mention.
Okay.
Yeah, George online.
Yes.
How you doing?
Wait, let me get my other phone. Your voice is kind of low. Wait a second. Hello?
He put us on hold.
He put us on hold. How dare you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear you, George. Can you hear us?
All the government people and all the major news media say there's a God. Doesn't that make you guys conspiracy theorists?
I guess so. I guess it probably would. I mean, I certainly hear it from all the candidates at every frickin' turn.
Yeah. Well, the candidates are pandering, right? Because there are a lot of people that vote based on whether they think the candidate has the same values they do, and belief in God is a very quick and dirty proxy to say, well, if you believe in the same God I do, then you must have the same values, and therefore I'll vote for you. So it's a very effective strategy by the candidates to pander to voters and get the votes. So they're doing what the political system is meant to do.
Yeah, it's like a big contest to see which one's the most...
Yeah, I find it very sad, personally. I find it sad, because we have a secular nation and a secular government, and here they are, and they're not talking about how they're going to make decisions and how they're going to do good things for the country and lead us forward, but they're talking about their belief in God, which is, at best
it's
irrelevant.
all style over substance.
Yeah.
Rather than dealing with issues and what are the real problems and what are the real proposed solutions. And I realize that on occasion, if you're lucky, you get to have them actually talk about religion. The thing is, though, that I don't know that I should blame this so much on religion as just the political process that we've created anyway. We've created this monster where I'd like to think that on some level, hopefully, we are electing people who we sincerely believe are going to best represent the desires and needs of the people. On some level, though, we are participating in a popularity contest. We are excluding candidates based on some ideological principles that may not have any real practical effect on what they're going to be able to do in office. I'm fine with that to some extent. I'm fine with everybody. You get to vote based on whatever reason you want. Like, I have no interest at all in voting for, let's say, a young Earth creationist in any position where they might be likely to use their views towards young Earth creation and promote it within a school science classroom. When I hear the various candidates talking about their belief in God, okay, it's not that big a deal. I live in a country where there's 80% of the population believes in God. I'm not a fan of the fact that when they end speeches, they say, God bless you and God bless the United States of America. But I realize that just, for now, it kind of has to happen. I think it's still worthwhile to keep bringing up that it really doesn't have to happen. And, oh, by the way, it probably shouldn't happen. But
we're not resigned to the fact
Yeah.
by any means, but we're realists. That's kind of how things are right now, and it's unfortunate, I think.
Isn't that kind of a scam?
Yeah, I think so.
I think anybody running for office is engaging probably in some kind of scam. I don't want to say that they're all completely dishonest, but the fact of the matter is, no matter how good of a person you are, no matter how sincere your intent is, I find it very difficult to believe that somebody either running for office or a comparable situation trying to impress a first date is going to be completely honest about who they are. It may not be an intentional or extremely contradictory misrepresentation. I mean, you might sometimes be forced to, for example, claim you're straight when you're gay, but it doesn't have to be anything that extreme. It's the goal is to make the person like you, care about you, and think that you're somebody they want to spend more time with. And that goes for first dates and it goes for candidates. And whenever you're in that situation, there may be somebody who is so ethically pure that they're unwilling to even slightly misrepresent themselves. I'm more concerned about somebody like that, because that tells me that, at least on some level, they really don't get what's going on.
Well, we could actually compare them. Like, the more they push God, the more dishonest the candidate probably is.
Yeah, I've often thought that the word God in a political discourse, the function of that is to shut off rational thought. It's to evoke emotions, and it's meant to, take you off the track of thinking rationally and making, evaluating what the person is saying, and more about, whether you have the same awe and wonder and all this other side, and it sidetracks the whole conversation that's going on and takes it off in some sort of emotional terrain, and so the whole thing is, in my opinion, just to shut off rational thought. That's the whole purpose of the word God in political discourse.
Yeah, it's a way of saying that, okay, now we've broached into an area where you no longer get to object because this is my religious belief.
Right. How dare you offend God and then disagree with me, right?
One of the issues that's come up recently, and I raise this only because it's relevant. This does not have anything to do with any particular candidate, no endorsement, no detraction, whatever. In a speech before a church, Sarah Palin, the new VP nominee for the Republicans, made a comment that was misinterpreted or misrepresented, including by myself on a Nonprofits episode, as saying that she believed that the Iraq war was a mission from God, or was something like that. What she actually said was more along the lines of, we should pray that this is a mission from God. And in explaining this later, and by the way, I didn't find that to be any better, at least for me, and I'll tell you why. In explaining this, they said, well, she's really kind of echoing the sentiment of Abraham Lincoln that says that we should be praying not that God's on our side, but that we're on God's side. And while I see the distinction, and I can appreciate it as somebody who used to be religious, I'm more interested in the consciousness raising that allows people to begin to grasp that it doesn't matter whether we're praying for God to be on our side or praying that we're on God's side. Neither one of those is a constitutionally valid application of government. This is a secular government. If as an individual you have those beliefs and you are concerned with it, that's fine. But to say that the nation should be praying, that the nation's activities are in keeping with what God wants us to do, is a violation of the Constitution. And it doesn't matter to me whether you're praying for God to be on your side or for you to be on God's side. Fact of the matter is, this is a secular nation founded on secular principles. No religious test for public office, freedom of expression, no establishment of religion, and there's a limit. There's a really fine line, gray area limit as to how far a public official can go in representing their personal faith and opinion and then applying it to the nation. And while there's a really good quote from Ronald Reagan, as a matter of fact, who I know some atheists who go, you know, those damn Republicans and Ronald Reagan, they never said anything good. Well, I don't have the quote in front of me, but you can look it up, where Ronald Reagan talks about the separation of church and state, and he is absolutely unequivocal that in walking this line, there is only one valid application of government, and that is neutrality. That is the only thing that provides the freedom for everybody to believe what they want to believe. And anybody who, as a matter of their official duties in public office, says that we as a nation need to make sure that we're on God's side, is now preaching and representing a religion. That's a violation. And it doesn't matter to me that there's a subtle difference between, you know, claiming that Allah has commanded us to kill the infidels, or saying, gee, I really hope that when we're killing the infidels, we're doing what Allah wants us to.
Amen, Matt.
Hey, can I make one more point?
You bet, George.
You know those million books of Dobson that they sent to the disaster victims?
Yeah.
They probably would have been quite useful. They probably could have used them for toilet paper.
Yeah? That would be a very good use. Thanks a lot, George. I appreciate the call.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
You want to...
Yeah, let's take one more.
Let's take one more
I'll
here.
do
and
one
then
more,
we'll
one
do
more
this
round,
next.
and we'll...
Hello?
We have Steve on the line. Are you there?
You know, boy, so many things to talk about here.
Well, you only get to do a few, because we only got 20 minutes left.
Okay, well, I want to make a comment about the religion. You know, as you know, for instance, the Catholic religion, not to pick them out for any reason, but the celebration of Jesus' birthday, as you know, is similar to Mithra, and Easter is Ishtar. And they've infused these pagan rituals, and they front the religion with a Jesus cover.
Yep.
So they use him as advertising, but your actions and your work start to be pagan. And I've come to the realization that basically all the religions are actually pagan religions with Jesus on the top. But even in some of the esoteric pagan religions, they have a view of Jesus, because you can't have a Jesus without a devil. The two go hand in hand. So they acknowledge him, but they don't acknowledge him as the main God, okay? So what we've got here, it looks like is, I mean, people don't question this. They blindly follow the religion because their parents did, and they look at people, think they're happy. But the religions have nothing to do with the Bible, not to get in a conversation whether the Bible is true or not, but it's just like a stock does not necessarily reflect what the company is doing. They're independent entities. And all these religions, I've come to realization, are truly pagan entities, and that includes the worship of Jesus along with other gods.
And I would go one step further and say that the pagan religions are ultimately largely based on astronomical things like the changing of the seasons and you know, star constellations, these sorts of things, worship of the sun, which actually does exist.
Sunday, today's Sunday.
And I'm going to both take a step back.
Okay.
In that I wouldn't say, I think it's an overstatement to say that Christianity is just Jesus basically glued onto pagan stuff.
Well, let me ask
However, I will go a step further than Don in saying that when we trace back what we know about religions and how they're founded, yes, the pagan religions are somewhat astronomical, somewhat animism, somewhat shamanism, and that all of these are in fact based on ignorance and fear across the board. And the fact that they end up being useful for controlling people and manipulating people and allowing some people who don't like to actually do any real work but would rather just sit around in a fancy cloak and collar and stuff themselves full of donuts while they pretend that they've done something to still draw a salary, yeah, that's kind of, icing on the cake.
Well, I think when I say paganism, most people are going to view it as worshiping Pan and other things, because that's what we've been led to believe. That, But it's more than that. It's a bigger, broader scope. But let me ask you one question. I was reading something yesterday about Freemasonry, which said it is the umbrella of all pagan religions. And I noticed there are symbols on all these churches. What is your view on Freemasonry?
It's a club like Shriners or...
with some secret handshakes that people have projected their fears and paranoia on.
Secret organizations, secret clubs have been the backbone of paranoid conspiracy theories forever, because we don't know exactly what's going on in there, and it's all secretive. And well, they pretend to be this, but we see this. Freemasonry doesn't have any secrets left. Or there's no reason to think they do. I guess if they do, we wouldn't know about it. But I mean,
they're really good at it.
There are former Freemasons who have revealed the secrets and their rites and rituals, and I think for the most part, it's just a dumb boys club. And I think they get far more credit than they ever deserve by people conflating them to some kind of nefarious counter, organization that's set out to dominate and control and rule the world. I mean, who doesn't want to dominate, control, and rule the world? Why blame it on the Freemasons? Don't we all?
Huh, well, that's true. All right, I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, George. Appreciate it. Or Steve. You were Steve.
Yeah.
There were two on the names.
That's okay.
On there.
That's okay. Well, that was actually a fairly good segue into the next little scamlet I wanted to cover. Apparently, I'm going to be back next time talking about more of these things.
Yes.
But let me try to hit another one today. I think I can squeeze it in, and that's stealing credit.
The thing, though, is you can't make a scamlet without breaking a few nest eggs.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
If it was short enough to fit on a bumper sticker, I'd have already copyrighted it.
Okay. All right. Well, we were talking about, astronomy, and if you can predict when the seasons are going to change and when the sun's going to start coming the other direction, man, you got a lot of power in your hands, because you can play exactly on this ignorance, and you can say, oh, well, I am causing it, pay homage to me, give me some money, give me some donuts, whatever the people want, some virgins, whatever, right? So this is stealing credit. And you see this all over the place, where something happens because of reason X, but it gets co-opted and the credit gets swiped for God or for the religion or for all whatever, right? So one of the basic strategies of Christianity, and this is I think a big one, is you go out and you find the people that are at the bottom of the bottom. They're down and out. They're poor. They're downtrodden. They're sick. All these things, and they're just at sort of wit's end. And you find these people, and you give them a little bit of help. You give them, some soup, whatever, and you convey the belief in Christianity at the same time. Okay, so you've helped them a little bit, which is a good thing. Nothing wrong with that. You've given them belief in Christianity, which is kind of a string attached. Okay.
And see, I'd like to point out that every Sunday on the bridge down, the overpass downtown by the 7th Street, there's some religious organization that passes out food to the homeless. Mm-hmm. They have a big turnout there almost every week. I haven't actually gone to attend. I do know that they often play Christian religious music. I'm assuming that they probably do some proselytizing, because I think the music alone will qualify that. I'll applaud them all day long for the work that they're doing to feed the homeless.
Good stuff.
I wouldn't have any objection at all if they'd stop tainting the gift by adding this kind of string attached thing. Okay, the guy who's starving, more than happy to listen to your music and hear your sermon if you're going to feed him afterwards.
It's a practical matter, right?
The real test of whether or not your religion is true in the ability that it has to affect people's lives is when they'll sit there and listen to your sermons when they're not hungry and they're not already a believer. And once you got your hooks into them, well, of course. But I mean, if your message is that strong, and by the way, this has no testament at all to whether or not the message is ultimately true. There's a difference between whether it can be effective and whether it can be emotionally appealing. I'm just talking about from the standpoint of whether or not you happen to be an effective minister for whatever it is that you're pushing. If you can minister without the ham sandwich attached, okay, well now maybe we can start looking a step deeper as to whether or not there's anything to what you're saying or whether you're just really charismatic and eloquent.
Yep.
But boy, if you want to feed people, feed people.
That's right. That's charity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what happens with this person you help out? Well, either they pull out of their pit, right? So there's usually only one way to go, which is up, right? So that's why it's such a great strategy,
yes.
is you're buying low, selling high. Either they pull out of it, they don't pull out of it, or they die. Okay? So if they pull out of it, you say, woohoo! They have been saved by Jesus, and God gets credit, and our church, helped minister this, and boy, you're probably going to have a believer after that, right? Because you have implanted in their brain this idea that it was the Christianity that was the cause of them pulling out, which they might have been able to do on their own. They might have been able to do it with just the ham and cheese sandwich you gave them.
Yeah. You've asserted a causal link.
You've asserted a causal link, right?
Where you can't demonstrate one. And we hear all the time about people who are, I was a drug addict who was addicted to everything, and my life was miserable, and I was living on the streets, and I had no money left at all, and I tried and tried to pray to God to get me out of this situation, and it never happened. And then one day I met a man who explained Jesus to me in a way that no one ever had before, and it really touched my heart. And immediately I had no more desire for drugs, alcohol, and now I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Okay, yeah. I'll claim a slight exaggeration in the story, I think. The point is that you haven't demonstrated any causal effect. People change, despite what some people think, all the time. And they do it without the intervention of religion. There are secular sobriety groups. There are self-help organizations and group therapeutic organizations that help promote people to better their lives. Why? Because better is better. Mm-hmm. It's not really that hard. Once you get through to people that they are responsible for what happens to them, that yes, we don't all start off on an even keel. Life isn't fair. Some people get stuff handed to them. Some people have more problems put on them, more pressure. Okay, as soon as you get over this, all men are created equal nonsense. That is something that's in our Declaration of Independence, because it's a premise about how we should go about treating people with regard to their rights. The fact of the matter is, all people are not born equal. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the Olympics. We wouldn't have sports groups. We wouldn't have people who are CEOs and people who cook fries. We need all of these people, and hopefully maybe there's a way to improve everybody so that we shift the trend up. But you don't start off even. And once you get over that, and then you say, okay, now I've got to deal with my life, and I need to deal with reality on reality's terms. And my decisions have consequences. My beliefs promote actions that have consequences. They have consequences on me, they have consequences on other people, and I need to be able to go through and assess cost-benefit analysis, risk-reward analysis, gut check feeling about whether or not I'm doing the right thing and how's this going to benefit me, and stop feeling sorry for myself because things didn't work out the way they did last time. I'm not trying to say that everybody's po-po pitiful me. Once you get that into people's heads, that they can change their lives start changing. You don't need religion's a really good shortcut for that. It really is. Oh, Jesus can change you. Well, you say that to enough people, one of them's going to believe it because they just hadn't been convinced that they could do it on their own. If you take the extra step to convince them they can do it on their own, not only would they tend to get out of that, but they tend to stop looking to fictional...
Right, you've taught them to fish, to use that
tugging
metaphor,
onto the skirt of a fictional man in the sky every time something goes wrong. When you teach people how to deal with problems rationally, they no longer need to panic and, oh, God, please help me not get arrested today. What? Please help me pass this test. Hey, here's a cure for passing tests. Study.
Learn the crap.
If you pray before tests and you think Jesus helps you, you're cheating. You're praying to cheat. Some of us actually, wanted to read and study a little bit and learn something. I mean, anybody can give you an A. Hell, I know some people who got A's first. Never mind.
Okay. So that's what happens when they pull out of it, right? You steal credit for God. If they don't pull out of it, if they don't pull out of their tailspin, then you blame the victim. You say, well, you just haven't accepted Jesus in your heart. You just haven't embraced this idea, it's all your fault, and the whole faith-based charity thing is based on this core idea that the people who are poor because they don't believe in whatever, right? They don't believe in God, and God hasn't given the blessings in return.
Yeah.
And that's the core foundational part of it, which is the sort of flip side of this whole thing.
Not to keep adding rants to your subject, but
Okay.
2 quick points to go along with this. Ray Comfort is one of the people who's guilty of one aspect of this, and that is he'll make the claim that you can demonstrate to anybody that God exists inside of 30 seconds, and all they have to do is sincerely hit their needs and ask for God to reveal themselves to them, and God actually will do it. And then when you say, well, I did that and God didn't do it, then the answer is you weren't sincere enough.
Yep.
And then the
What a
second
scam.
example is the deceased troll known as Mother Teresa, who
Oh, yeah.
felt that suffering was a blessing from God because it taught us more about, it helped us appreciate the good things from God. So while she ran around collecting millions in order to create new nunneries, to create new nuns, to put dying people who didn't need to be dying if we'd have spent the money on medical treatment and food, they put these people in these
care. Yeah.
horribly squalid places and allow them to suffer, I don't know, with dignity?
Yeah, she had kind of a sadistic sort of
Yeah.
mindset where she thought the suffering was just the most wonderful thing in the whole world. And
Hey,
she called it
Jesus suffered.
Kisses from Jesus.
If Jesus suffered, then you can suffer too. Well, you think you're better than Jesus? Meanwhile, we're stockpiling tons of money, and we're taking money from, I don't know, S&L loan scammers and Haitian dictators. Never mind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Keating scandal.
Don't tell me Mother Teresa was any kind of saint.
Yeah.
By the way, since they put it up on the screen.
Yep. Go.
Beginning on October 5th, we're on a new time and channel 16, 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. If you're watching here in Austin live, that's when you need to start tuning in. Normally we run from 3 to 4:30, which means we're almost off the air. October 5th, 4:30 to 6 p.m. That's a reminder. There'll be more information on the website. Pass the word around so that we're not dead on calls.
Okay, let me give 2 more real quick examples of stealing credit. One is
got 1 minute.
When I was in Spain, you were in the castles in Spain, and when you left the castles, you left under these portals. They had these religious icons over them, and the thing was to pray to that icon that you would return safely. You went out, you returned, it was because of that damn icon, right? If you didn't return, it was because you didn't pray. Same sort of gimmick. Another example of stealing credit is the Christian nation myth, right? Our nation is strong and wonderful not because of Christianity, but because of
In spite of it.
things like freedoms, democracy, self-determination, all these things which are mostly at odds with the religion, so I'm wanting to get that out. In all of these cases, religions are stealing credit for something they didn't earn. Right?
Yeah.
God's given credit for...
They also steal credit for explaining the origins of the earth, morals, anything that they can. Any place they can stick God in as an
Over and over
explanation, they go for it. There's no tie, there's no evidence, and it's basically ignorance and fear and gullibility exploited. Thanks for tuning in. We only have a few seconds left. I want to remind everybody we'll be down at Threadgills here very shortly. This coming Saturday is the Bat Cruise. There's more information at the website. The 27th, we'll be heading to the San Antonio Zoo. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in live, and for those of you who are watching or listening around the world. We appreciate the emails. We cannot respond to every one of them, although we're desperately trying.
Yeah,
and
we're getting
but we
overwhelmed.
do read all of them, and we're very grateful for the efforts of some people who are helping to promote the show around the world. Please keep it up, and we'll see you again next week.
And thanks to our callers, of course, if you didn't say that.
And the crew.
And the crew.